Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello.
All right. Okay, I think we've got everybody in. I'm Kristen Angel. I'm Associate Director of Advocacy here at NORD. And I am here with my colleagues, Jamie and Elise. And of course, your wonderful hostess with the mostest today is our wonderful volunteer, Kansas Rare Action Network State Ambassador, Angelica Baker. I am going to start today off with a quick disclaimer, just to share that NORD and volunteers representing NORD cannot provide medical advice nor legal advice. And you can view this full disclosure via the chat message. It is in the chat box for you to view. And we're going to kick things off today with 2 short videos. So if you just bear with me, I'm going to switch screens. Can you guys see my screen, the video screen? Okay. I've got a weird pop-up coming up.
I am Tristan.
Angelina.
Nawazay Shafiq.
Regina. Habari asubuhi, Javi. Jag är Christian och jag bor i Norge.
I live in the United States of America.
In Australia.
Malaysia.
No Brasil. Tunaishi, Kenya.
My passion is for fashion and design.
I love to dance.
Yusurutan.
Para viajar e descobrir novas culturas. Anapenda kunitazama nikipuliza mapovu. Jag älskar idrott och spelar spel med familjen min.
Minhas paixões são minha fuga quando as coisas estão difíceis.
Ada hari-harinya bila melakukan perkara yang biasa akan jadi sangat susah. When your disease makes you feel isolated.
It's difficult to walk. Och vara med på laget.
When I'm tired.
Afraid.
O controle da doença pode ser desafiador.
Atau mengecewakan bila saya kehilangan masa.
Muda muhimu sana.
But we learned to be resilient.
Para apreciar os pequenos detalhes que me trazem alegria.
Kumuona mtoto wangu wa kiume anavyofurahi tunapoenda nje. Nikijua anasikiza hadithi na sauti zilizo karibu.
Mencari titik berhubungan dengan masyarakat yang tak pernah saya sedar wujud.
Och vara överge på grund av mänskliga utfall.
There is support.
Sua bondade inabalável.
Mina vänner.
Keluarga,
Enfermeiras.
Doctors.
support workers.
Assistenter. Mashirika ya wagonjwa.
Together, we are a strong community.
Nimeweza kuelekewa.
Histórias compartilhadas que me libertaram das dúvidas.
Vågar vi senseless.
I am Tristan. I live with sickle cell.
I'm Angelina.
And she has classic neurological disorder. Saya Shafiq dan saya hidup dengan ectodermal dysplasia.
Regina, eu tinha leiomiosarcoma, um câncer raro.
Ojoni Harvey. Ana SMA. Spinal muscular atrophy. Johan Christian och jag har UI. Med förbergöret.
Esta é minha vida.
Suara saya. And I am more than my disease.
We are rare.
Kami ramai.
Nós somos fortes.
And we are proud.
Okay.
Welcome. I'm Peter Saltonstall, President and CEO of the National Organization for Rare Disorders, and would like to welcome you to our 2021 Virtual Rare Disease Day event. Before we begin, I'd like to send out a special thank you to all those advocates and others who have spent so much energy and time supporting the rare disease community. So thank you. The role of Rare Disease Day is to bring together advocates and patients from around the world to help tell the story about rare diseases. There are events like this happening virtually all over this country today, and some of the audiences that we're really trying to focus on are those in the state legislatures, where advocates and legislative people come together to understand the burden of rare diseases and the impacts it can have on them, and therefore build the appropriate legislation and pathway to make sure that bills are passed that support rare disease patients. As a matter of fact, NORD's doing that in a very focused way with rare disease advisory councils. We've got them set up down in 16 states and are building them in others. I think 2021 is going to be an interesting year for us. The reason I say that is because we've just come off of a very difficult year with a pandemic that's impacted the rare disease community in a number of different ways and has really shown some of the inequities in the healthcare system. For all of you that are watching today, the importance of the rare disease advisory councils is critical to the success of being able to communicate the story and the needs of the rare disease patient community. So in conclusion, I would really like to make sure that I recognize and thank all of those sponsors who have helped us make this day a reality. Without your continued support, none of this would happen. So a sincere thank you from all of us at NORD and the patient community. Taking part in events like today's are really important to the rare disease community, and we must always remember that alone we are rare, and together we are strong.
All right. 1 second, and I'll swap over my. Okay, I'm now going to hand it over to Angela, or Angelica, I'm sorry. And I was looking right at your name too. Oh, I don't think do we have sound?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. Maybe Angelica's muted, I'm wondering.
She has to unmute herself. Angelica, unmute yourself.
Angela
Okay.
is
Okay, I think
unmuted
I'm
on my
here.
end.
Okay, sorry about that. So welcome everybody. So this is Kansas Rare Disease Day 2021. And I'm just gonna kind of briefly go over the agenda. So we are gonna do an official welcome, and then we're gonna have some speakers, patient and caregiver speakers. And then we will have some speakers from the University of Kansas Medical Center, or University of Kansas Medicine, School of Medicine. And then we do have one of our industry speakers, Francis, is here to join us today. And then we do have, Elise is going to go over what our Kansas, what a report card is for the legislation and coverage for rare families in the rare community, and just identify some need to know information. And then we're going to have a little group activity where everyone is going to be able to speak a little and kind of share their stories and share some things and concerns that they have having to do with the state of Kansas and how we might be able to help the rare community here. So again, hello. I want to officially welcome you to the Kansas Rare Action Network's 2021 Virtual Rare Disease Day event. My name is Angelica Lamas Baker, and I'm currently the Kansas Rare Action Network Ambassador. Not only is this our first official Rare Disease Day event here in Kansas, but it's also our official introduction to you, the rare community, healthcare workers, industry workers, and the Kansas government, and we're so excited to be here. The mission of the Rare Action Network is to connect and empower and unify a network of individuals and organizations with tools, training, and resources to become effective advocates for rare diseases through national and state-based initiatives across the United States. The Rare Action Network is the nation's leading rare disease advocacy network, working to improve the lives of the 30 million Americans impacted by rare disease. And our goal is to ensure the rare disease community is represented and supported in all 50 states. We're a broad spectrum of stakeholders ranging from patients to their families, caregivers, and friends, from researchers to industry to physicians and academia. While working on both the national and state level, RAND filters information to help address issues of national concern and engage rare communities to take action through policy, awareness, and education initiatives in their state and local communities. This evening, you will hear from various speakers that represent an example of the stakeholders I just spoke about, sharing their own personal stories or interests in supporting the mission here at Kansas RAN. Primarily in regard to our 2021 focus of getting an established rare disease advisory council to represent our community to the Kansas state government in Topeka. But first, we'd like to get to know you a little bit better. I'm going to open up the floor for everyone to kind of let us know where you're from and what your connection is to the rare disease community, and just anything you might like to share at this moment, just to kind of introduce yourself to us.
Feel free to just unmute yourself. You just click that button.
Okay, I'll go first. My name is Joe. I'm located outside of Overland Park, Kansas, and I am inducted into this group for what I like to call, I'm basically a cesspool of genes, because it seems that my genetic makeup made me predisposed to a number of diseases, narcolepsy, arthritis, cancer, a few other fun ones and spin-offs. So that's my ties to this group, and just looking for support and hoping to advocate for others like us.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Joe. Maybe we can do some more introductions after we do our presentations. Maybe some folks will have some additional questions at that point.
Yeah.
But you can also use the chat function as well if you're not comfortable, speaking on camera or on the call. You can certainly use the chat function to introduce yourself too.
So I am actually the first speaker. It wasn't something I had planned, but since the Kansas Rare Action Network is new and newly established, I am going to go ahead and share a little bit of my story and the importance of an RDAC to me. So for anyone joining late, my name is Angelica Lamas Baker, and I am the Kansas RAN ambassador. I wear many hats or crowns. I'm a patient advocate, today's International Woman Elite, Curvy Elite Mrs. Kansas 2021, author and podcast host. I'm also an empowerment, mindset, and advocacy coach specializing in working with rare and special needs coaching, and the founder of the Royalty and Root Foundation. I was born with PKU. It actually has various levels of severity. I was born with one of the most severe levels, which is considered to be classical PKU, which means I don't have the enzyme in my body to break down the amino acid phenylalanine into an essential building block for your body, which is tyrosine, and that basically functions everything that you do from your mind and body. Throughout the years, there's been various shifts in the types of treatments for PKU. And when I was born in 1979, it was thought that a person would be able to discontinue treatments once they reached the teens. Then it was learned that our minds grow and expand throughout our lives, making it essential for a PKU patient to continue their treatment throughout their lives. This movement was called Diet for Life. So how is this important when it comes to Kansas and getting an RDAC established here? As a PKU patient, our primary treatment regimen revolves around our diet and nutrition. We must adhere to a strict low-protein diet. Sometimes we're only allowed to consume about 3 to 5 grams of protein per day from food. The rest needs to be consumed through a medical formula. To put this into perspective, 1 egg is approximately 6 grams of protein. So for the most part, a lot of us can't even eat an egg a day. Right now, Kansas does actually pretty good in providing newborn and child medical nutrition assistance. I never had an issue growing up obtaining my life-sustaining medical nutritional food supplement as a kid. But once I reached an adult and I was charged with providing my own health insurance and making my own income, and then of course getting married, that's where the short fell for me. See, I left treatment for several years, and when the side effects became too much to handle and start causing severe quality of life issues, my husband and I decided it was time for me to seek treatment again. We went where I knew I could always go before, which was the Kansas Special Health Care Needs program, which had helped provide my formula previously. It was where my specialists and everybody I knew who knew anything about PKU referred us. To my dismay, because we didn't have any children, our incomes, even my husband's, even just his income, exceeded the allowed income for any assistance that they would give me. They referred me, of course, to Kansas Medicaid. We exceeded their limits also. At one time, we were actually told by a caseworker, why don't you just get pregnant, and the state of Kansas would have no other option but to give you assistance because of the extreme nature of and possible outcomes of an untreated PKU pregnancy. That would give you time to find some help, or even at that point, you guys would fall within the income barriers so that we could provide coverage for you. This wasn't an option to us. Next, we tried to go the avenue of obtaining private insurance, only to find that my medical formula, which is classified as a DME, which is not a prescription medication, was explained to us basically that it was an item that doctors thought would help me function better in life, but was not really necessary for me to actually live. So it was basically means they were not required by the state to cover any cost for it, because if it were in fact life-saving and essential, then it would actually be a prescription pharmaceutical, which then left us to pay out of pocket in excess of about $1,000 a month just for my medical formula. This is not including any specialized designed low-protein foods for me to actually be able to eat, which currently now in 2021 averages about $12 for one 17-ounce box of linguine. So the costs were pretty high for us. My final point is PKU is still relatively new when it comes to standards that were originally classified in many states, policies, and definitions as a pediatric disease that only affects children and that we grow out of. These definitions have not been fully updated to account for the new AMA standards that PKU patients should be treated for life because we do not grow out of our genetics. And RDAC and the Kansas Rare Action Network would be so beneficial when it comes to bringing our voice to the lawmakers to help Kansas move into a new age of rare inclusion when it comes to insurance coverages and assistance programs, so that future generations don't have to decide between eating and paying the rent or utilities this month, which is why I felt it was important to become a part of Kansas RAN. So that's a little bit about my story. Our next speaker is going to be our first Kansas RAN volunteer, Donna, and she's going to tell a little bit about her story and why she feels like an RDAC is important and how the rare community has affected her.
Hi, I'm Donna Yodrich. There's an extra R in my name there. But I used to tease my husband. We used to call him Yardstick. Everybody throws an R in there. It's Yodrich. But anyway, my story is we didn't have, we had families that were healthy on both sides. Nothing major that happened ever to children that we were aware of. And when I had worked at KU Med Center on National Institute of Health funded research, the National Cancer Institute funded research for several years, and had a child and then another child. And the second child passed their screening, had, some birth issues, but just mechanical. And she, I'm just going to tell you, till the age of 5, she didn't have one rare disease, she had multiple. When she was 2 years old, well, actually 23 months, she was admitted for dehydration from like just a virus. And she was very dehydrated. And when she was getting ready to be discharged, they were just going to keep her overnight, give her a bunch of fluids. They heard a cardiac rub. It sounded like a washing machine in her chest. And they said, this is weird. So they started doing a cardiac workup, and she had acute pericarditis and eventually went into cardiac failure and was diagnosed with her first rare condition, Kawasaki disease. And she was treated very promptly with all kinds of stuff. And finally, it was high dose IgG that brought the fever down and started reducing things. So we had quite a stay in the hospital at 23 months. And when she went home, she continued to have pulmonary issues and was treated as though she had CF, even though she had done a sweat test and it came back negative. I believe she probably had a variant of CF that wasn't, the mutation hasn't been identified yet. But anyway, that was at 23 months. And then approaching 3 years old, she developed bruising all over. And I worked in the medical world, so I didn't want to ever be like hypochondriac-y or whatever. And I didn't want to be perceived that way. And so I contacted our doctor, told her, the doctor said, oh, don't worry about it. Toddlers get bruises. And I called her back the next day and said, I counted them. There's 68. They're bumpy. They're everywhere. And we took her in. Her platelet count was 8,000 and she had immune thrombocytopenia. And she was admitted to the hospital as her daycare had a CPS investigator coming to my house for a severely bruised toddler. And which I was thrilled the system worked, but that was one more headache. And a lot of parents with kids with, rare conditions have a similar experience. But after that, she started developing vitiligo, the loss of pigmentation of her skin. Then her hair started falling out. It was alopecia areata. Then she was diagnosed with Addison's disease, adrenal insufficiency. So it was not one rare disease. It was just a cascade on and on and on. By the time she was 5, and she was a fiercely independent kid. And, like at 2 years old, I wouldn't even try to dress her because she knew what she was going to wear. And that was just it. So she started approaching 5 years old. She was making me late for work. She wouldn't get dressed. And I was like yelling at her and said, why won't you get dressed? And she said, my arms don't work. And I said, what do you mean? She said, my arms don't work. And she could not raise her arms over her head. She was, I called her pediatrician. She said, bring her in. They did the whole workup for a stroke, everything. I was Googling, what could it be? And she was admitted. She had MRIs, lumbar punctures, the whole 9 yards, and they never found anything. And I kept begging them to do an acetylcholine receptor antibody because I had read about myasthenia gravis. And they were dismissing me. They actually got a psychologist to come in and help me cope as a mother. And they would not do that test. They had her there for like 2 weeks doing every other test. I said, it's one simple blood test, just do the test. And so finally, when the attending went off rotation for the weekend, I got their fellow to actually draw the blood. But by then they were releasing us and just saying, just keep following up with us, blah, blah, blah. We didn't find anything. So we were at a loss. My daughter was gurgling by now. She wasn't able to stand. She was falling down. Her speech was slurred. And I couldn't get anyone at my local medical center to really dive deep into what was going on. So after work on a Friday, my sister and I drove all night to Mayo Clinic and went to their emergency room. And they immediately got a neurologist in there, a pediatric neurologist, who admitted her to the hospital saying, this kid is in a life-threatening situation. She failed a swallow test. And I just wanted to show you this. This is Audrey before all of her hair fell out. Can you see it? She's on all fours. It was because of profound muscle weakness. She wasn't able to ambulate using her legs. She had to start crawling around again. And anyway, this is other hospitalizations, but here she is at Mayo Clinic. They're helping her walk. And anyway, so they diagnosed her immediately at the same time. Oh, and they had done EMG, electromyograms that are really painful. They did ocular ones, and she was a 5-year-old kid. And we had put her through all of this, and still it was, when we were at Mayo Clinic, the local hospital's results came back with the positive acetylcholine receptor antibody. And it took Mayo Clinic, because Audrey had such complex problems, it took them a month to come up with a treatment recommendation that wouldn't further cause her, because every time we pushed against her immune system, it pushed back even harder. And so anyway, Audrey got a port, and she had to go into the hospital every one weekend, every single month. So her life revolved around that. And Angie was talking about insurance. That's my passion, private insurance. We just don't have the wraparound services that people who qualify for other things do. You shouldn't have to be put in the position to be completely destitute to qualify for something. The other thing, for over 10 years, we paid more in out of pocket when Angie was talking about DME, for supplies, things that didn't fall within prescriptions. We paid more than our house payment every month with 2 very good insurance plans. We kept 2 insurances. My other passion is family caregiver health. There 1 out of 4 family caregivers who have been helping someone for more than 12 months report having worse health outcomes. And there was just another study about caregivers that if we don't care for caregivers who develop from chronic toxic stress, and I'm not saying these people are bad stress either. It's not. It's the constant worry of trying to maintain your kid's spirit and their life and pay for it and not lose your job so you have insurance. That's all like stressy. And incidents of heart disease and depression are really, really high in caregivers. And if we lose caregivers who are providing care for more than 65 million folks in the United States, what are we going to do if we lose the caregivers, or who's going to care for them? One of the things that doesn't get a lot of attention is sibling caregivers. these have long-term effects on the siblings of anyone or the child of a parent who has a rare condition. We've got to start really addressing that and normalizing feelings of grief, serial grief, missing out on this, missing out on that, not being able to do this, so that we can start talking to kids about this as they're growing up. So those are just a little things about Audrey to the age of 5. And Audrey passed away at the age of, she turned 15 in her last hospitalization. And I spent, they say to be an expert in something, you need to do 10,000 hours of work or experience. And I spent just that much at a bedside in a hospital with my daughter in her 14 and a half years. So I'm just super passionate. Can I throw in one more thing? The RDAC. I've been on the Kansas Maternal and Child Health Council for several years. That is, and I got started in that work because of my daughter Audrey. She didn't even know she had special needs. We always thought special needs were like so serious, not just us, the providers. We would say, isn't there any group or anybody like this or who we can relate to, and there wasn't. And when Audrey found out that she was considered to have special medical needs and qualified to participate in a youth advisory council for the state of Kansas, she was so excited to be able to advocate for others. And when Audrey passed away, I wanted to continue her work. And so I joined the Family Advisory Council for Special Healthcare Needs and got started working on the maternal and child health special healthcare needs, the whole maternal and child healthcare, because they do newborn screening too. And so I've seen what a difference one state advisory council can do. And I know that with this dedicated group I'm seeing on the screen, it's limitless what we can accomplish together. So thank you.
Thank you, Donna. We really appreciate you sharing Audrey's story and your story. And it is definitely, the caregiver piece is definitely, drives home, I think, to a lot of people, and caregiver mental health is just as important, because you can't care for your loved one if you're not, at your best. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. First time I've actually got to hear Donna's story from her. And it's very touching. And I know that was just like a very small piece of your story, Donna. Next, we are going to hear from a couple of healthcare industry workers that Donna actually had the chance to interview.
Can't hear, Kristen. You're muted.
Sorry, thank you. All right, let's start that again.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us today to talk about our virtual Kansas Rare Diseases Day. These are some wonderful pediatric experts who can help us learn more about how we might be able to help Kansas with a Rare Disease Advisory Council. And so can you take a second to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so thank you, Donna, for having us and for that brief introduction. Like you said, my name is Carrie Harris. I am a pediatrician. I almost exclusively practice in adolescent health now, but as Donna said, I do have the privilege of serving as chair of the Kansas Maternal Child Health Council, and I direct our adolescent clinic at KU in Wichita.
And I'm Sid Sivamarthi. Like Dr. Harris, I'm also on faculty at KU, and our passion is teaching and service provision, and taking care of the children that we do serves our focus at KU very well. My interest is particularly the care of medically complex children, and in that role, I am the director of the Medical Complexity Clinic. I also am primary care doctor to several medically complex children. I also run the asthma clinic, so it lends itself well into the special needs children's care. So that's those are my roles in the clinic.
Thank you so much. I shared with you the NORD State of Kansas report card that lists a bunch of different categories that it rates us on. Have you had a chance to look at that report card? And if you have, what impressions did you have?
Carrie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, if I can find my unmute. Yeah, so I did look at that. Thank you for sharing that information with us. I was not aware that that existed. And I think, you know, initially I was just taken aback by how poorly we as a state are doing in medical eligibility, and how complex that process is, as we previously discussed, the three of us, and how it's difficult even for us as physicians to understand that process. And then we are expecting parents who are under extreme stress to be able to understand that. And so between that and the out-of-pocket costs, I just see this incredible, maybe unnecessary burden that is placed on these parents to try to figure out that system. And I would love to be able to see us do better in those areas.
Great, thank you. What about you?
Those numbers were very enlightening. It's really nice to have comparative scores with other states. So we're comparing like for like. It's nice to have benchmarks. But in the end, I felt like those scores, what they highlight simply is that there's just a lot of work to be done. And I don't believe that any of the stakeholders, be it the patients, be it the families, be it the hospitals, the community workers, anybody is going to be satisfied with less than an A+ on anything. I mean, sure, it's aspirational, but it certainly is a benchmark that's worth aspiring to. So in that sense, I think it kind of at least sets the tone to say, okay, this is where we're at. It's not a criticism, it's just merely where we're at. And we just, let's all just roll up our sleeves, identify things to fix, and just get on with the work of getting it fixed.
Very cool.
I like that.
So where would you start if we had a rare disease advisory council? Where would you even start? Or where do you think we could make the biggest impact?
I don't have a good answer for this. Oh, sorry. I can jump. Okay. I don't have a great answer for this. I think, we have discussed in other conversations how important that just having the family or patient advocates on advisory councils are, and how much education they can provide to the other stakeholders at the table. And we talked about that just yesterday, about you providing information to your PCP on the rare diseases that your daughter had. And I certainly have patients in my practice as well, but constantly educating me on that. So I think just having all those stakeholders and voices at the table are very important. And I think I would want to hear what they said. I would want to know what direction they wanted us to go, what challenges they wanted us to tackle first, because, I think that that's where you're going to make the biggest impact if you have most people behind it and have their skin in the game, if you will.
And the problem is so multifaceted, isn't it? It's a Medusa. I mean, you can't go after one head and expect, things to fall in line. And so I agree with Carrie. I mean, there's just no simple answer to this. I wish it were. I mean, we'd have gotten fixed by now if that was the case. But my view from the trenches, as it were, and my preference, obviously I'd want to listen to the advisory council and what they have to say, but my view would be, it would help us greatly if we had centralization of care. What I mean by that is, this is a relatively small group of patients. If they could get good, consistent care because they are referred to a dedicated group of individuals, who do this on a daily basis, they're far more likely to get a consistent workup, a consistent kind of path towards a diagnosis, and more importantly, a management plan that is cohesive, that is workable, and so it's quite important to have clinics like that. And that was where KU tried to start with the medical complexity clinic. And I know Kansas City has the Beacon Clinic, which is again an amazing resource. So, but the problem with running clinics like that are purely, simply put, it's a money losing proposition. We cannot run a clinic like that within the confines of what is expected of us in healthcare. Right, so we do need funding. We are lucky enough to be supported by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, but even that only goes so far. So I think it's really important for everybody to look to try and support clinics like this. Funding is one way to do it. Resources, because we don't really have even enough people to work in these clinics. So I'm not able to perhaps run it as much as I'd like to, or have as many clinics as I would like to. And an added benefit to having centralization like this is that I see that clinics like this have this force multiplier effect, because not only are you taking care of the patients, it gives you ample opportunity to teach other the future doctors, and we have physical therapists come in. Any professional who works within this clinic has the opportunity to pass that knowledge on, and that can only happen with centralization. And you add another layer to that, the ability to do research. You have this ready pool of people that can be tapped into for anybody who's interested in research. So I really think that from a provider perspective, I think it would be really important to have some form of centralization.
It's wonderful. I appreciate what you do every single day to make life easier and better for kids that are facing things they shouldn't even have to imagine, and their families. To know that they've got a foot soldier with them means more than I can ever say. So thank you both.
Well, likewise, Donna, thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You guys see my screen now? Okay.
Next, we're going to have Francis. He is the head of state and government affairs and policy with IPSN, speaking on their perspective.
Great. Hey, thanks, Angelica. And thanks also, Donna, for sharing your experience. This is the kind of thing that keeps me motivated every day to go to work. I know, and thank you to the NORD team for doing such a great job driving policy change across the country. I'm honored to be invited to be here with you. I was asked just to give a couple of points about RDACs and why they're important and sort of how we look at them. I think I should probably first introduce IPSN. Most of you may not have heard of us. We have a handful of medicines that are available in the United States, 2 for cancer, but we have a growing focus on rare diseases. We currently have 1 medicine for acromegaly, which is a thickening of the bones that occurs as a result of pituitary tumors. And we make an insulin-like growth factor for severe primary IGF-1 deficiency. We have in development 2 treatments, 1 in early stage and 1 that we hope to be bringing to patients actually maybe by the end of this year, for a genetic condition called FOP, fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, which is it's a bone growth disease where soft tissue, when there's trauma, there's a flare up and then the soft tissue turns to bone, and this occurs over time, starting when children are about 3 years old, even younger actually. It's quite painful as well as being disabling and debilitating. So ours hopefully will be the first treatment for that to be available to patients. That's what we do. I'm the state government affairs nerd, as I said to some of the folks before, the policy nerd at IPSN. So a couple of quick points about RDACs and why they're important. One is, as some folks have mentioned, and as you may have experienced yourselves, decisions about which treatments are available to patients, particularly in Medicaid, are regularly being made by state pharmacy and therapeutic committees, P&T committees we call them, and drug utilization review boards, really that don't have any expertise in the conditions that are being treated, right? That expertise is hard to come by. Rare disease by definition is rare, so the experts are also rare, as well as the patients, and the patients are the experts. Coverage determination processes in place a lot of times don't lend themselves to input from patients. So a properly functioning RDAC, Rare Disease Advisory Committee, can help with that by being a source for expertise in a specific rare disease, right? They may have a rare disease expert available, but not somebody who's an expert in that particular rare disease that's being reviewed. I think one thing that's important with RDACs is to make sure that they don't create additional steps or create an additional delay in the availability of drugs after FDA approval, because this is about coverage and about availability, right? Once the drug's been approved by the FDA. NORD has been very good about making sure that states don't actually create additional hurdles to patients getting access to a new medicine. I think the second point is patients really don't have a routine place where they can take their access challenges to get them resolved. So a person with a rare disease by himself or herself, or even with the support of their patient group, really can struggle to have their voice heard. There's so many rare diseases and the populations tend to be relatively small, so that when patients come together to advocate as a patient advocacy group, the voice, no matter how fierce your voice is, it's still relatively small compared to a condition that has hundreds of thousands or millions of patients, right? So the capacity of patient groups, as some of you know all too well, is often limited by financial constraints. And so one solution to that is joining or participating with an umbrella group like NORD or Every Life Foundation or Global Genes or others that aggregate the voices of rare disease groups. But RDACs also create sort of a natural locus, a natural place for rare disease patients to be heard in a public forum, to amplify their voice and have some formal power in an otherwise opaque process around coverage determinations. I think the third point that I would mention, or perspective, RDACs can be a pretty good platform to fix problems, address concerns, plead your case when you need help with your particular situation. Elected officials, and I think we have Representative Wolf Moore on the agenda for later, they're wonderful allies, and they can be great champions, but they face a lot of demands on a lot of issues from many constituents, and a lot of times they don't have the subject matter expertise to really solve the problem that one of their constituents might have with coverage, for example, with Medicaid. And the tools that they have might not fit that particular situation, or may not fit it quickly enough, let's say, or in a timely fashion. So sometimes the really specialized nature and focus and position of an RDAC in the process, in the coverage determination process, can make it a really effective platform for advocates. And fourth, RDACs can really become a routine, sort of well-worn pathway, if you will, to fix policies and other issues that don't work for rare disease patients, right? So RDACs can be accessible to patients to engage and to ask for help. They can be a sympathetic ear that understands the issues, that sees the issues on a regular basis, so is familiar with them. Usually, almost always, RDACs are populated with subject matter experts, including patients, importantly, but also providers. So, they know the processes, they know the pressure points, the leverage points, they know how to affect change in those situations. They're experts in the system, if you will. So they also, and probably, very importantly, they have credibility with policymakers, and they have a really defined role in the coverage determination process. So I think if you take all of those things together, RDACs really are a part of getting a voice that's impactful and effective at the state level to make sure that people can get the treatment that they need. I just blew through a lot of things kind of quickly. I apologize. I'm happy to answer questions if anyone wants wants to ask any. But again, I'm honored to be here, and I hope I can help you with the job ahead.
Thank you, Francis.
Sure.
I'm going to pass the torch over to my colleague, Elise Patel, our Manager of State Policy for the Western region. And yes, I know Kansas is in the Midwest, but here at NORD, we divide the country in two parts, and Kansas is part of the West.
Thank you, Kristen, and good evening, everyone. As Kristen said, my name is Elise Patel, and I'm the Western Region State Policy Manager. We're really excited to talk to you guys tonight about NORD's Rare Disease Advisory Council work, why RDAC started, and where we're headed this year. And as many of you know, 25 to 30 million Americans are impacted by a rare disease, which breaks out to about 1 in 10 individuals. And while that's quite a few people that are directly impacted by a rare disease, we're finding that many lawmakers aren't necessarily aware of those unique challenges faced by the rare disease community. So next slide, please. The solution is to form rare disease advisory councils, where a diverse group of people in the rare disease community can come together and advise state government. And this is especially important because we know that so many of our healthcare decisions are made at the state level. And we also see these RDACs as a way to have the community and legislators really come together and partner in a more strategic way to address these issues on a regular basis. The first RDAC was actually created in 2015 by some of our wonderful volunteers in North Carolina. And since then has gained quite a bit of traction across the country. And as you can see from this slide, we currently have 16 states that have passed RDAC legislation, with Massachusetts being the last state to do so just this past month. Much of the progress has really happened over these last 2 years, with over 10 governors signing RDAC legislation into law since 2019. The next slide.
Sorry, I'm frozen.
You're good. I can just keep talking until it catches up. So NORD launched our Project RDAC as a way this past year to really help optimize the existing RDACs, and also as a way to increase the RDACs that we have across the country. So under this initiative, NORD is providing opportunities for RDACs to collaborate with each other, as well as educational resources to guide RDACs every step of that journey. And I welcome you to visit our website, rarediseases.org, and there you'll find a Project RDAC tab where you can find all of our resources, upcoming events. That's where we'll list upcoming coalition meetings, as well as an interactive state map where you can view state-specific information. And currently, Kansas does not have an RDAC. However, we're hoping with your help, we can change that. So we are definitely hoping to start building out a diverse coalition of stakeholders from all across the rare disease community. I know, as Francis has mentioned, it really takes everyone to come to the table and a lot of partners to make this happen. So if you are interested in being part of a coalition for Kansas, please feel free to contact us. You can always reach us at that email, rdac@rarediseases.org. And again, please check out that Project RDAC website, as we have some really great resources available to learn more. And now we want to talk about our NORD state report card. So this is our 6th year publishing a state report card. And the report card is really a tool to evaluate how effectively states are serving the rare disease community, tracking individual states' progress on priority policy issues, as seen on this slide, and enabling effective advocacy by providing that tangible tool to see how your state measures up in key areas. And I know our healthcare providers touched on this a little bit about their thoughts, and we use this as a way to really hopefully encourage more policy. But we really understand that the issues that are highlighted on our report card do address several critical and relevant policy areas, but we do also understand that there's other policy issues that may impact the lives of rare disease patients. And this year we transitioned the report to a new interactive digital format. There's a state report card landing page, as well as a web page for each of the 8 issues that are highlighted in the report. So feel free to check out our report card. I know it was listed in the chat. We also have it on the website. to play around, and you're welcome to see how Kansas measures up, as well as other states that you might be interested in. And finally, I just wanted to share a little bit more on the methodology behind the state report card. So all of the data that you see on the report is as of November 2020, with the exception of rare disease advisory councils. And we updated the RDACs through December to reflect the exciting passage of the RDAC in both Ohio and Massachusetts at the end of last year. Any current bills that are currently in state legislatures or bills that may have even passed in the 2021 session are not included or factored into the grades for this report card. And then each issue has its own appendix that we derive the overall grade from, and each individual page will also contain a grading methodology section where you can read more about how the issue was evaluated. And with that, I'm going to welcome you to always reach out to our policy team if you have any questions related to our RDAC efforts or our state report card, and you can reach us at policy@rarediseases.org to ask me those questions. And I will also turn it over now to Angelica, who will introduce our next speaker and share more about Representative Kathy Wolf-Moore. I think you might.
Angelica, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a very energetic 3-year-old in the background. We were going to have Representative Kathy Wolf-Moore, who is the representative in Topeka for District 36. Unfortunately, she gave me a call a few hours ago, and they are in some emergency last-minute sessions and hearings pertaining to an education bill that they need to vote on in the morning. So she's unable to attend. However, she sent her sincere regrets and that she would like to actually listen to the recording, or at least get to hear the recording, and possibly participate in something here in the near future with us. But that does leave us open for our next activity, which is interactive. And it's basically a practice in advocacy and making your voice heard. We want to hear from everyone here, any barriers that they may have come across, either seeking treatment for themselves or loved ones, or if you at this time kind of want to share your story and why you're here, and your attachment to the rare community, all those sort of things. The floor is kind of open for that right now. I believe we may put up a whiteboard if you don't want to actually verbalize or be on camera. You can also
we'll use the chat function.
Chat, okay. Okay, so you can chat and let us know some of the barriers that you faced and all of that. I know I spoke a lot about financial barrier, and that is quite a big thing. So.
I think while folks are kind of organizing their thoughts, you know, one of the things that comes up a lot that is an interesting, that I've always found interesting working at NORD and working with the rare disease community, is that each disease is unique. You know, everybody has a rare disease that is, there's 7,000 rare diseases, and all of them are unique. However, there are a lot of common challenges amongst the rare disease community that some people, you know, don't even connect those dots and realize. I think it's one of the reasons NORD's motto always rings true with me. And I you know, alone we are rare, together we are strong. Access is a huge issue. I know NORD, you know, is on the forefront of advocacy efforts to ensure patients have access to a timely diagnosis, access to medical professionals that specialize in their rare disease. You know, all of those barriers. I know with the current pandemic, you know, as awful as it's been for us this past year, if you're going to be a glass half full type of person, you know, telehealth and telemedicine was a really big kind of win for the rare disease community. It's something that was much needed prior to a pandemic, but it took a pandemic to start making that a more common area that patients were able to access their physicians and their treatment centers via telemedicine. And I'd love to hear from those on the call if you've had good or bad or experiences with telehealth during the pandemic, and are you excited to see that keep going forward even after the pandemic has finally come to an end, or we go back to somewhat of a level of normalcy?
Well, I have to admit, I can't use the chat function because this is something I'm so passionate about that I think I would end up just pounding my keyboard into oblivion if I had to actually write out my thoughts on this. My conditions all started later in life, and so all of mine were adult onset. And some of the biggest things that I've run into is, one, learning how to be my own advocate and having to continue my relentless advocacy for myself, because I have a rheumatologist, an oncologist, an endocrinologist, a primary care physician, a phlebotomist, and I have been begging to be sent to Mayo so I could have a team of doctors approach my conditions, because I keep telling my primary care physician, my cancer went undiagnosed for over over 2 years, because I couldn't get anybody to believe me that my thyroid levels were lying on paper. I said, I know it says the TSH levels are normal, but trust me, they're not. It's lying to you. I don't know what else to tell you. And so it took me screaming and yelling to just be able to see an endocrinologist. But I think that the later onset that an individual has with a number of these comorbid conditions, the harder they have convincing a primary care physician or another physician, no, I'm not a hypochondriac. No, I'm not looking to have radiation treatment just because I have spare time on my calendar. I legitimately have concerns here, folks, and I need somebody to listen to me. And I just feel like I'm banging my head against a wall 9 times out of 10. And finding finding this group has been kind of a life-saving event, just because I know that there's others out there that suffer from worse conditions than I do. And I just wish that we could get the medical community to understand that, yes, there are unique individuals that can carry, much like Donna's daughter, multiple rare diseases, that, this does exist. And maybe it might be the first time that you're seeing it, or we might be a rare case where we are the first time it's being presented this way. Donna, I think you spoke to the fact that there was one of your daughter's conditions that probably hasn't even been diagnosed yet, because, the levels were off, but they couldn't speak to them specifically. So, finding an open-minded location, much like Mayo or something like that, where they're not afraid to embrace the different, the new, the rare, and come together and listen to us. I've been very fortunate that all of my medications and all of my treatments and solutions have been, medically prescribed. So they're covered under insurance, and I have benefits and such to that extent. But I swear, I'm not sure if it's usually the radiation that wears me out, or if it's just the beating my head against the wall trying to get people to believe me that wears me out more on a daily basis. So those are my biggest hurdles as an adult with rare conditions.
Yeah, and that goes right back to, thank you, Joe, for sharing that. And that goes right back to that, those common challenges. On average, it can take up to 8 years for an accurate rare disease diagnosis. That's a fact, and that's a sad fact. And I know we want to knock down those barriers. We want to get more treatments options and more research done for rare diseases. And we need your help. Those of you joining today, just by joining this call today and learning about what you can do right in your home state of Kansas, and be an advocate. Some of these issues can be addressed with the launch of a rare disease advisory council in the state, and it's a beginning. you know, there's certainly a lot of work to do. I know we heard the physicians that were speaking earlier on the interview that there is a lot of work to do and we have to start somewhere, but you know, an RDAC can really help improve a lot of these issues over time. It's not going to happen overnight, unfortunately, but it's definitely going to, you know, happen and help you guys. So, you know, thank you for raising your voices and being there to share your stories, because, you know, we can go knock on doors, but we really need that patient voice to show that there are people that actually need this. They need this assistance. They need this help. And how can we help them?
Right. This is Marie McConnell.
Hi, Marie.
And I guess I'm one of the lucky ones because I was diagnosed with bronchiectasis in 2014.
Oh, hold on, Marie. I think you got muted by accident. There you go.
Okay. Anyway, I was diagnosed with bronchiectasis by my local pulmonologist. I never had any problems at all, but I had a friend that recommended that I go to the National Jewish Hospital out in Denver. And when I was there, they diagnosed me with alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, which is a condition the liver doesn't provide enough of the antitrypsin. Anyway, I don't get that enzyme. So with the help of NORD, I am receiving weekly infusions of Prolastin C, which is really a lifesaver for me. So I'm really thankful to NORD.
Well, thank you. And we always like to hear that we're able to help. You know, that is our mission, is to help the patient community and the organizations that serve them. So we thank you. Dana, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry, I just muted you because there was background noise, but go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello.
There you go.
Okay. Well, we've been running into a lot of issues with trying to find the right doctor for my boyfriend. I'm his caretaker now, but he was diagnosed back in 2016 with leukocytoclastic vasculitis. And they didn't know, the hospital that he went down to, they didn't know anything about it. And they gave him like a steroid to try to heal him. And what this stuff is like his red and white blood cells are so strong that they are really good for the immune system, but they fight against each other and it eats the legs off, the meat. And kids can have it, but it really doesn't do too much to them. They can grow out of it. But when it hits as an adult, it's usually for white males between ages 40 to 50 years old. And then they really don't know what to do with it or don't know anything about it on how to correct or fix or what doctor to go to. And the steroids actually made it eat faster. He had some lady that came in plain clothes and did a biopsy and said, this is what you have. And then they started with treatment. They said, you either lose your legs or we can shave you down to the bare bone and use your bone marrow to rebuild your legs back on. So he chose that part so he can walk again, but he's supposed to stay off of his feet the majority time, just do nothing but sit around, which most people just can't do that. So since he's been up here with me, I'm having a hard time for getting the doctors to listen to me because he has his own mind, and you know, it's not like he can't talk for himself. He just prefers me to do it since I can relay the messages a lot easier because of all the big words and everything with it. So they finally just recently narrowed it down to a section of the leukocytoclastic vasculitis to where he has cutaneous small vessel vasculitis. So now we've got another place to go. So we're doing the wound care center, the infectious disease. They're just now sending us to a rheumatologist. But when he came up here, our PCP thought, he was like, "Oh, I read it in a book." So they really don't know. They've never really seen it firsthand. And so it's a matter of finding the medications, the painkillers, and we're running into insurance where the painkillers aren't being covered because of the opioid pandemic, whatever. And they don't always cover like the bandages or anything like that, or walkers or canes or anything like that with his insurance. So like the Mayo Clinic is out of the question because the insurance won't cover that either. So it's more of trying to find somebody who will listen. We did have a doctor tell us that's not such a thing. Like, well, he wouldn't be laying here. So they're calling it like a cellulitis because it does get infected to where he can't walk. And it's like a sunburn coming in from the infections, like a sunburn inside out. And that causes him to where he can't walk. And then we're fighting it all over again. So right now it's more of containing, but they don't know exactly what it's caused from quite yet. And reading up on it, there's some places that it's just unknown. We are finding out throughout the family, it might be hereditary, but we're not sure yet. But a lot of sleepless nights, getting interrupted sleep because of the making sure he has his painkillers or antibiotics. So now it looks like he's going to have to be on antibiotics as a preventative for the rest of his life, trying to keep it contained.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. And, that definitely is frustrating to hear from, to not be believed. I mean, we hear those stories a lot, unfortunately, and sadly, where it is, you become the own expert. I think Donna said it best, how many hours, 10,000 hours. And, that's just how much a lot of people can spend just trying to find a diagnosis. And by the time they're done with that, they are the expert. And in a lot of cases, when you do see, specific providers, whether it be for symptomatic reasons, you're the one bringing the information about the disease and the rare disease part. And that's, it's not necessarily right, but that is, how it is. And it can be very frustrating and tiresome. And, we've seen cases where, children, there's misdiagnoses, there's, they're accused of child abuse when it's actually a rare disease that is causing the symptoms. So it's definitely like all of these things are challenges that the rare disease community faces on a daily basis. And, I appreciate you, Dana, for sharing that and the struggles that you're going through. Because, I think what's nice is everybody on this call, I think, can relate to some level as to what you're going through. So you're not alone. And even though it may feel like it on days, it's important to know that you're not alone and there is a community behind you and a community fighting for, making changes in the rare disease space and making changes at the state level and the federal level to improve the quality of life of rare disease patients and their families.
Yeah, we're just like having problems. Like they wouldn't even do another diagnosis or anything. And we had to get the CD down from Texas to bring it up here just so they would even believe us on what it is. And that was a headache on its own, trying to get records from several years ago and, the cost and everything. But we're still being sent from doctor to doctor to doctor because they really don't know where to send him.
Did you say the cost of the medical records?
Yes, it was like $40 for a CD because it had like
okay.
4,000.
Here's what I want you to know: a term called continuity of care. They cannot charge you if you know to say continuity of care. Don't say you want the records for you. Say it's for their new doctor. And then they don't charge you.
Ah, okay.
And it's
That would-
ridiculous. You have to know these words to, yeah. I used to pay too till I learned. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, and we're trying to find medications that helps his legs heal because steroids is a big no-no. Now we found that Meta Honey seems to be the best so far. Because we went from silver gel, which was like $35 a tube. And then they recently started doing Meta Honey, and that seemed to work even better. But sometimes with the wounds, they want to pack them, but some of them he has multiple wounds on his legs because one opens, one shuts, they leak, creates another one. And then we have the issues of making sure one heals and trying to get everything to heal. So they're all in different stages. And when they want to just pack them all of them, they start opening back up again. So we're just kind of trying to figure out which one, of course, because we don't know the stages. We haven't seen it enough for the stages. So we're just kind of doing it on our own versus not exactly listening to the doctors on some of it.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I do want to note for everybody on the call, NORD, we are on the policy front, but we also do have a patient assistance, and it's our largest department at NORD is our patient assistance program. And we have an array of resources as well. We have an information and resource specialist who can provide information to third-party organizations that could have potential resources for you as well. So I would encourage anybody seeking, additional resources and information. If NORD doesn't have a service to provide or, a resource within our own organization, we have an array of information, out in the world that are available at our fingertips. So I encourage people looking for information. Dana, our information resource specialist, is fantastic. And we just brought on a new team member to that team. So they're an array of knowledge. I use them every day. I'm emailing them things like, I need this, I need that. But, we've got a lot of programs that service, rare disease patients, whether it be medication specific or disease specific. But then we also have respite care programs for caregivers. We have a COVID emergency relief fund that we launched this year due to the pandemic. And we're consistently launching new programs to assist the patient community. So I definitely say, keep in touch with that. I know in the link that we just shared in the chat, the Patient Resource Center again, and also our undiagnosed network that we partner with. We even have a travel assistance program to get people to and from clinical trials, and the undiagnosed disease network locations as well. All right. Anybody else like to share? And we've got about 10 minutes or so left.
I wanted to say that I'm glad that Dana's here. Dana and I just, on a personal level, we actually went to high school together, and she reached out to me when she saw the things about NORD and this particular event, because they are having a little bit of trouble with access to care. Her story is one we hear echoed a lot, and even the doctors during the interview talked about that access to care and getting diagnosed. I know my personal story, I was seen at KU until my 20s. For my PKU, they were the clinic to go to. And as the doctor said, because it's basically a money-losing endeavor for the hospitals to keep some of these rare clinics open and these complex medical problem clinics open, because there's so few of us and there's so few doctors who specialize. And I unfortunately had to move over to Children's Mercy, and short after my move, they actually closed the clinic at KU. So, access to treatment and finding clinics and doctors, is just one of those stories, especially ones that will listen. If you're an adult, or even if you're a parent who's just trying to find an answer for your kids. I mean, that's one of the primary things I hear over and over again. We have another friend that we went to high school with who's having a similar issue with finding someone that will listen to her, and finding a clinic willing to see her after she's had some other issues, and she has a diagnosis that she believes may be incorrect. So it's, yeah, I mean, access to care and those DMEs, those walkers and those bandages and just things that insurance tells you they're not essential. I mean, they make your life easy, but I mean, you're not going to die without it, technically. When it becomes a quality versus quantity of life type of a situation, that's where it was with me. Like, I was stuttering, I was in a wheelchair most of the time, and that was probably 5 or 6 short years ago. And I was very fortunate to find a medical trial to help me with a new drug that I helped participate in, and it's now been approved by the FDA. But I had to travel 4 hours round trip just to participate because nobody here was participating in it, and I had to beg to be put into it with my history and everything. So my heart kind of goes out to everyone who has those issues.
Yeah, thank you.
Megan,
Megan,
I think you were raising your hand,
yeah,
weren't you?
Megan, I saw. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the disease that I was actually born with. I was actually born with a rare skin disease, and it's actually a birthmark that is called a giant congenital nevus, and it covers about 85% of my body. And I have, like, I don't know if you can see it on camera, or maybe you saw it when, like, in my picture when I kept turning my camera on and off, but I also have a bunch of satellites that are associated with the nevus. And when I was born, the doctors couldn't even tell my parents what I had. And my parents were told that I would die before the age of 2. And now I'm almost 20. I'm going to be 25 this year. And yeah. And also, I also had epilepsy associated with it. And I had, and in November, this past November, I had celebrated 10 years of having been epilepsy free, because I ultimately had to have brain surgery at the time to stop having seizures, because I was having seizures associated with the disease. And my parents they actually founded the organization that focuses on trying to find a cure for my disease. And I also have a good friend who actually lives in Kansas City who has a nevus on his neck.
Wow.
What's the name of the foundation, Megan?
Nevus Outreach. Here, as a matter of fact, I'll type the website into the chat box.
Yeah, that would be great. I've actually met some folks from the Nevus Outreach at our Oklahoma.
As a matter of fact, you know Lauren Isbell or Kathy Stewart?
Yes, Kathy. I've met Kathy.
Kathy is my mom.
Right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think we were actually at an in-person event maybe about a couple of years ago at the Oklahoma Capitol building.
I knew I recognize, yes, because I recognize the last name. Yes, I do. I met you guys there.
Yeah.
It's
I
well,
think
nice
you also met
to see
my
you
cousin
again.
Lauren, who I think has the bone disease. I think either Donna or Alyssa were talking about.
Yes. Yes, I can't think of the person now, but yes, you are correct.
Yeah. Yeah, Kathy Stewart is my mom.
Well, we
Creepy small world.
That's fantastic. You know, as soon as you said it, I recognized you, and I was trying to figure out which event it was, and then I was like, it was Oklahoma.
Yeah, we were at an in-person event at the Oklahoma Capitol building a couple years ago, I think.
This is our first Kansas event. This is our first Rare Disease Day in Kansas. And so for those of you not familiar, we typically host these events at the state capitol buildings or near the state capitol buildings. And we, you know, we bring ourselves to the legislators. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we're virtual this year. But it's been, you know, we've had a really successful week so far of events. We've got another week and a half left of these events. You know, Oklahoma, I think tomorrow, Friday.
Yes, and I'm actually registered to attend that one as well.
Awesome. Well, you'll see at least myself, I think, or one of us at least will be attending that event as well. So,
Yeah.
But I thank you guys so much for sharing. I know, it's not easy. I can't even imagine, just going through what you guys go through on a daily basis. I'm a caregiver, to close family members that have had rare disease. And so, I understand from a caregiver perspective, but I also did see firsthand the struggles and challenges that you guys all talked about today, whether it be access, financial burdens on things that aren't necessarily, a medical prescription per se. But I encourage you all to stay really active and vocal here in Kansas. Work with Angelica and myself and Elise, we're your go-to team here in Kansas, and get more involved. We need your stories. Your story is the most powerful thing you can bring to a legislator's office. You don't need to know the bills and the legislation inside and out. We'll provide you a lot of that information and make sure that you're well equipped to have those meetings and those conversations. But your story is the most powerful thing, because the legislators want to hear from their constituents. And if this is something that's impacting their constituents, they will actually take notice. And, so thank you all for taking that first step and joining us today. And I do hope you'll continue to, be a part of the Kansas RAN and our Rare Action Network program, and connect with Angelica. I know we're looking for a co-ambassador here in Kansas. So, and we're in the community engagement liaison. So there's a lot of opportunities, and we really want to build up a strong grassroots network here in Kansas. And I'd also like to thank Angela for a great job hosting today, and as well as Donna. You're amazing. We love you here at NORD. Thank you so much for the work you did as well. And thank you to Francis, Joe, all of you for all, participating today and speaking and sharing your story and just connecting with us. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And, this is just the start of a conversation. This event is to kick off the year. We're going to have a lot more opportunities to connect. As Angelica mentioned, Representative Moore couldn't attend today, however, is interested in participating in a future event. So hopefully we can, organize something where you can all get in front of some of the state legislators and talk a little bit more about the importance of getting an RDAC.
Thank you, everybody.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.